The phrase "knowledge is power" is particularly pertinent in the world of warfare. The more you know about your enemy, the easier it becomes to defeat them. If you know where their troops and armor are moving, you can take the necessary measures to stop them. If you know where their most important assets are located, you can plan and execute strikes to take them out. In the past, that kind of knowledge was provided by scouts and spies. Today, it comes from space. Hundreds of miles above the Earth's surface, satellites track troop movements, spot supply depots, monitor air bases, and expose hidden positions deep behind enemy lines. Ukraine relies heavily on these systems in its war with Russia, but Kyiv's most important eye in the sky wasn't launched by an allied superpower or billionaire tech company. It was crowdfunded. Bought and paid for by ordinary Ukrainians, the so-called People's Satellite has become one of the most effective intelligence assets in the world, and a veritable nightmare for the Russian war machine as well. Before we get into how it works and the unique benefits it brings, here's a look at the fascinating origin story of this one-of-a-kind satellite system. It all started in 2022, during the opening stages of the conflict. The Sahi Pritula Charity Foundation decided to organize a fundraising campaign for 3 Turkish Bayraktar drones, calling on the general public to make donations. It was a way for regular Ukrainian men and women to play their part in defending their homeland, without necessarily having to take up arms themselves, and plenty of people answered the call. Indeed, at the time, large swathes of the Ukrainian public were doing everything they possibly could to support the country's defense forces, whether through donations or providing support in other ways. So even though the drones came with high price tags, people were only too happy to donate whatever they could afford. For some, that was just a few dozen hryvnias, while others were able to make larger donations in the hundreds or even thousands. It all counted, and it all added up, and before long, literally millions of Ukrainians had pulled together to raise the 600 million hryvnias, close to $50 million necessary to cover the cost of the drones. They did it all in just 3 days. It was an almost miraculous feat, and the Turkish drone manufacturer was so impressed by the spirit and dedication of the Ukrainian people that it decided to waive the fee and hand over the drones for free. So all of a sudden, the foundation was left with a massive amount of money and a burning question: how best to spend it? Of course, it could have simply refunded the millions of people who made donations, but those people donated for a reason. They wanted to improve their country's chances in the war. They wanted to be a part of the defensive effort, and to contribute something that would help them fend off the enemy's invasion. So after much debate and discussion, the foundation came up with a rather out-of-the-ordinary solution. It decided to use the funds to purchase a satellite. And it would be called the People's Satellite, in honor of the countless hard-working Ukrainians of all different backgrounds, age groups and professions who had paid for it. The satellite in question was a Finnish ICEYE synthetic aperture SAR model, and the foundation was excited about the benefits it could bring to the Ukrainian army, stating that the purchase represented a significant step in responding to the government of Ukraine's urgent request for critical Earth observation data, and it will greatly benefit our armed forces. Some people, however, were a little nonplussed by the decision. Originally, they'd raised money for drones, military assets with the power to provide almost immediate results on the battlefield. Instead, however, all of those funds had gone to something that, at least on the surface, wouldn't be able to provide such a rapid return on investment. However, even though Ukraine had to show a little patience, the People's Satellite soon proved that it was a far smarter purchase than any drone could ever be. By June 2024, less than 2 years after the purchase officially went through, the satellite had helped Ukraine capture more than 4,000 images of enemy targets, including 370 airfields, 238 air defense positions and radio reconnaissance sites, 153 oil depots and fuel storage facilities, 147 depots of missiles, ammunition and aviation weaponry, and 17 naval bases. As Ukraine's main intelligence directorate GUR noted at the time, approximately 38% of all data collected by ICI has been used directly to prepare and execute strikes against the enemy, resulting in billions in losses for Russia as the cost of its aggression mounts. That's not an exaggeration. This satellite helped Ukraine's armed forces plan and execute numerous successful strikes, like the attack on Sevastopol Bay in September 2023, which saw multiple Russian warships, including the Minsk landing ship and the Rostov-on-Don submarine, wiped off the map. Those assets alone were worth several $100 million, so it's easy to imagine how the People's Satellite has contributed to billions of dollars worth of losses in the long run. and it's only become more useful and valuable as the war has progressed, especially as Ukraine has ramped up its campaign of striking Russian targets like oil refineries and ammo depots to weaken the enemy's ability to keep the war going. Indeed, in a more recent update issued on May 27, 2026, the GUR noted that the People's Satellite has now provided almost 6,000 images, many of which have proven crucial in finding and identifying enemy assets and helping Ukraine plan its attacks. The GUR space intelligence units receive daily satellite images, and this data is used to track objects in occupied territories in Russia, identifying enemy military targets, plan strikes, and also assess the consequences of attacks. Andriy Yusov, a spokesperson for the Defense Ministry of Ukraine, went further, explaining just how influential this technology truly is. For modern warfare, access to space technologies plays a crucial role, and it was precisely the People's Satellite that became Ukraine's first sharp eyes in orbit. We see where to aim, we understand what is best to strike, we have control over the consequences of strikes. The multi-billion-dollar losses of the Russian aggressor, these are the results, including the People's Satellite, which strengthens our resilience, and this systematic work continues. The ministry also cited several examples of locations that the satellite has helped them track and monitor, even sharing actual images captured from space of places like Olenaya Air Base, fuel storage sites in Russia's Krasnodar region, and the Zayabrovka airfield, as well as naval vessels docked in Novorossiysk, a location that was recently targeted in a hugely successful drone strike that dealt massive damage to one of the Kremlin's best warships. And the People's Satellite isn't just helpful for finding these locations and tracking enemy movements, but also for confirming and understanding the impact of Ukraine's attacks. After a deep strike on a Russian facility far behind enemy lines, for example, Ukraine's GUR can rely on the satellite to provide clear, detailed images of the aftermath. They can use those pictures to see which targets were struck, how much damage was done, if fires are still burning or repairs are ongoing, and so on. It all makes a difference because the more information Ukraine's military has, the more it can improve and optimize its future operations. This is all part of the country's larger strategy and overall approach to the war, which revolves heavily around the idea of always seeking improvement, never simply settling for the way things are, but always striving to do more, to hit harder, to cause more chaos for the enemy, and to extract more value from every asset. And the most astonishing part of all of this is that it was all made possible by the general public of Ukraine. Every single person who donated to that initial fundraiser has, in effect, played their part in helping the army find and strike hundreds of Russian targets, dealing literally billions of dollars in damage to the invaders. Of course, this isn't the only satellite that Ukraine relies on to provide intelligence and imagery, but it does have a few unique characteristics that make it perhaps the most valuable and important one. Before we get into that, just like the People's Satellite itself, the military show brings you the full picture, not just the headlines. Hit subscribe to stay ahead of the curve. To understand the true value of this satellite, it's important to look at how it works, because this isn't just any satellite, it's a SAR satellite. In simple terms, that means it emits radar waves and measures the reflections to capture images of the Earth below. That's very different from a conventional optical satellite, which functions a lot like a camera in space, snapping photos of the scene below. And just like regular cameras, optical satellites work best in clear conditions, but can struggle at other times. They can have a hard time capturing images at night, for example, and they can't see through clouds, smoke, fog, or rain, meaning that they can effectively be useless for hours or even days at a time when bad weather comes along. They're also not the best at detecting camouflaged or hidden equipment, and Russia, like many militaries, often makes use of camouflage to hide troop movements or attempt to conceal assets under trees and among foliage, so they're harder to spot. Conventional satellites can also be easily fooled by decoys. They might take a picture of what looks like a field full of tanks or an airfield with dozens of bombers and fighters waiting to take off, but it could actually be a clever ruse by the enemy to fool their opponent. The beauty of Ukraine's SAR satellite is that it faces almost none of those problems. As the GUR notes, it has the power to obtain imagery at any time of day and in any weather conditions. It doesn't even matter if there's heavy cloud cover, because the People's Satellite has the power to see right through it. This is so important because if Ukraine had to rely on conventional satellites alone, there would always be the risk of low quality or entirely useless images, caused by clouds or other bad weather conditions, leaving the country's armed forces with less intelligence to work with, which would, in turn, make it harder to plan attacks. Russia could also take advantage of fog and cloud cover to move assets or plan surprise assaults on Ukrainian positions, which could lead to important breakthroughs along the front lines. With the People's Satellite, however, Ukraine has ever-present eyes in the sky that never fail to generate the data that it needs to stay one step ahead of its opponent. In addition, because the satellite works with radar, rather than regular camera technology, it does a much better job of spotting camouflaged troops or concealed equipment, and it can differentiate between decoys and real military assets more effectively too, by providing exceptionally high-quality images. Indeed, ICI, the company behind the satellite, says that certain images can reach a resolution of up to 0.25 meters per pixel, and a single image can cover an area of up to 225 square kilometers. That allows Ukraine not just to see vast patches of land, but to zoom in and make out even the smallest details with ease. Many other countries have access to SAR satellite technology too, including some of Ukraine's biggest allies across Europe and beyond. Because of this, one of the big arguments against the very idea of the People's Satellite back in 2022 was, why can't Kyiv simply rely on its foreign partners to provide the intelligence and imagery it needs? Well, it's true that those partners have been very generous in their support of Ukraine, with the likes of France and the United States in particular helping out greatly with satellite imagery. However, the problem with relying on others to give you the intel that you need is that you can't always count on them to be as rapid, responsive, or perfectly aligned with your specific needs and demands as you want them to be. It's the same story when it comes to other forms of military aid. Yes, plenty of countries have sent everything from missiles to air defense systems and even main battle tanks to Ukraine. But it was always up to those countries to decide what they sent and when they sent it. Kyiv was able to make requests and influence decisions, but it wasn't the final decision maker. It was always at the mercy of other countries' politics and choices. So when it comes to satellite imagery, Ukraine sometimes had to wait relatively long periods to get the images it needed. Its partners could also choose to impose strict restrictions on what images they were willing to provide. They might not have been willing to share pictures of certain locations, for example, or might have been concerned about escalating the conflict somehow by providing too much intelligence too quickly. With the People's Satellite, it's a totally different story. A story where Ukraine isn't just a side character, but the star of the show. Because it's the exclusive operator of this satellite, it's in charge of what data it collects, when it collects it, and even the format in which the images are provided. This allows Kyiv's forces to gather the exact data they require with the utmost speed and efficiency. Indeed, the Serhiy Prichula Charity Foundation has confirmed that the satellite passes over Ukrainian territory twice every day, with ISI founder Rafal Modzevsky noting that Ukraine is able to use it to monitor Russian troop movements almost in real time, capturing up to 24 images of the same target on a daily basis. And in conflict situations, that matters more than you might think. Because in the world of war, nothing stays the same for long. Russia is regularly repositioning its assets, like air defenses and missile batteries, for example. Its troops, too, are constantly on the move, with formations making their way across frontline territories on a near constant basis. At airfields, too, planes and assets may be repositioned or relocated to other fields and hangars, and at sea, ships can move from port to port. If you have to rely on satellite images that take days to arrive, you might be looking at pictures that no longer reflect reality. One of France's satellites could capture an image of a mechanized brigade somewhere near the front, for example, but it could have already moved on somewhere completely different by the time that picture has made its way to Ukraine. But with the People's Satellite, Ukraine has incredibly fast access to this imagery, with the Defense Ministry noting that it often only takes a few hours for images to come through, and that speed makes it much easier to make decisions based on that data. Only Ukraine's GUR knows just how many decisions the satellite has helped to influence, how many attacks it's played a part in, how many lives it's saved, and how much damage it has helped Kyiv's forces to deal to Russia. But it's not hard to see what a vital piece of the puzzle it is. Throughout the war, but especially in 2025 and into 26, we've seen Ukraine carry out countless devastating precision strikes on Russian assets across regions like Donetsk, Luhansk, and even as far as Crimea. So many of these attacks are remarkably successful, with Ukraine's drones and missiles striking their intended targets with remarkable efficiency. At the front lines too, we've seen Ukraine's defenders lay traps for Russian forces, defend small settlements for months on end, and eliminate one Russian assault group after another. That's not down to luck, it's down to intelligence. Ukraine is able to carry out these kinds of attacks and defend its territory so well because it strives to be one step ahead of its opponents at all times. It actively takes steps to see where Russia's best assets are being moved to and tracks its troops' movements, and there's no doubt at all that the People's Satellite has played a huge part in all of that, capturing thousands of images that have helped the country make hundreds of intelligent, data-backed decisions. It's yet another example of how Ukraine has leveraged technology and innovation to its advantage in the war. We've seen Kyiv's forces make use of cutting-edge drones, state-of-the-art electronic warfare systems, and even artificial intelligence to strengthen its defenses and even the odds with its opponent. And the People's Satellite is yet another inspiring demonstration of Ukraine's forward-thinking approach to emerging technologies. And arguably, the best part of all of this is that there's nothing Russia can do to stop it. Even if the Kremlin's forces decided to take some sort of military action against the satellite, using cyber warfare for example, or even anti-satellite missiles, it wouldn't matter. Because the People's Satellite is fully insured. ICI has promised that if anything happens to it, Ukraine will be provided with an identical replacement. So for as long as this war goes on, the satellite will continue to hover far above, out of sight but not out of mind, playing its silent but invaluable role in this war and leaving the Russians with nowhere to hide whatsoever. For another amazing example of Ukraine's technological mastery, check out this video, which explores how Kyiv's defenders have found an astonishing way to nullify Russia's missiles without having to fire a single shot. Alternatively, check out this video to see how Ukraine has liberated a large amount of land in 2026 so far, not just stalling Russia's advances, but actively undoing them and sending the Kremlin's war machine back to square one. And to make sure you don't miss out on more videos like this, subscribe to The Military Show today, and thank you for watching.